Hello, I'm Ant Pearce, CEO of Saltaire, a business focused on changing the ways that businesses are paid and received. Our aim is to improve the flow of cash to the entire supply chain. We're passionate about supporting small and micro businesses and helping them unlock the cash that's trapped in their invoices. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by a key figure in changing the way that businesses get paid, the UK Small Business Commissioner, Liz Barclay. Liz, thanks for taking the time to be with us today.
I'm very pleased to be here.
So Liz, let's get straight into it. What is the role and objectives of the Small Business Commissioner's Office?
The Small Business Commissioner's remit is quite tight, and it is around about helping small businesses with fewer than 50 employees to resolve payment disputes that they may have with bigger customers. So the bigger customers would have more than 50 employees. We also have, as part of our remit, the role of supporting and giving out information, etc., to small businesses. And we administer the Prompt Payment Code. And the Prompt Payment Code is the code, a voluntary code, to which companies sign up if they are prepared to commit to paying 95% of, at least 95% of their invoices within 60 days. And within that, at least 95% of their invoices from their small suppliers within 30 days. So again, it's not a wide remit, but there's quite a lot to do, as you might appreciate, within that basket.
Absolutely. And can you describe the impact of poor payment practices on small and micro businesses?
If I were to think about purely economically, I'd be saying to you, small businesses go to the wall if they can't manage their cash flow, and they can't manage their cash flow if they don't have certainty and know when they're going to get paid. They need to know when the money is going to hit the bank account so that they can work out whether or not they can make the money they have stretch in between, or do they need to borrow? Is there some other product that they need to put in place in order to get through, to fill the gap? But small businesses don't really want to have to engage with other financial products and financial services if at all possible. They really want that certainty of getting the invoices paid within the agreed terms on the day that they're expecting it to arrive. They won't invest unless they've got that certainty. And when I talk about investing, I'm talking about in skills and new jobs, in bringing on members of staff, in training, or in equipment or anything else that they might need, not necessarily to grow the business, but to keep the business operating at the level at which they want it to operate. But it isn't purely an economic thing. It's for small businesses, micro businesses, freelancers, sole traders. This can cause sleepless nights, and sleepless nights lead to mental health issues. And we are increasingly seeing people with mental health problems because they're being paid late, or they're not being paid within reasonable terms on their contract, or they haven't negotiated better terms on their contract and not realised that they weren't going to be paid for several months. So the impact on health, and particularly mental health, has got to be taken into consideration here. And it's really, really important. And your small businesses, and again, I break them down to freelancers and sole traders and micro businesses, and as well as small businesses, they are the lifeblood of their local communities, of their societies, they know their communities. And given the right support at the right time for the stage of their business, they can do the levelling up because they understand the needs of the communities that they're serving.
Absolutely. And I think you've probably answered a chunk of the questions that we've got, and we wholeheartedly agree with everything you've just said. I mean, the certainty bit is one that resonates quite closely with me. Lots of businesses don't even know when they're going to get paid and how much they're going to get paid. Just having that knowledge and certainty that they are going to get paid at a certain time will have a significant impact.
But the language around all of this is really interesting to me, because quite often a business will say, well, you'll be paid in standard terms. Now, if you don't ask what standard terms are, you're not going to know what standard terms means, because there's no such thing necessarily as standard terms. And sometimes I think small businesses think it means 30 days. It can mean 60 days after the end of the month in which you present the invoice. We don't know unless we ask. And quite often it feels to me, and I've been freelance most of my working life, so believe you me, I've made all these mistakes. I have lost money because I haven't asked, when am I going to get paid? I haven't got things in writing. I haven't negotiated better terms on the contract. I got overly excited about the piece of work that I've been offered and forgotten to ask any of the proper questions. And lots of the work I've done has turned into a hobby because I haven't been paid for it. And we can't afford as small businesses to do that. We really need to know that we are going to be paid soon enough to be able to keep our staff on, keep paying our own suppliers, keep paying our own bills. And let's face it, given the rising cost of doing business at the moment, this is even more important than it's ever been, that we get small businesses paid as quickly as possible so that they know that they can manage their cash flow. Otherwise, for big business, the message is the next time you need that talent that contributes to the success of your bigger business, it's not going to be there. And then it's going to cost you an awful lot to go out and look for new suppliers who can do that job as well as that previous supplier did. We need to work in partnership, otherwise we're not going to get through the recession that's coming.
Again, I agree. And you mentioned the impact on the buying organisations and potentially the incentives of looking after your supply chain. For buyers, paying quicker impacts on their cash flow. So what incentives have we got? What levers can we pull to ensure that they do pay quicker?
I think we need to get boards involved at the top end. We need to. It seems to me that when we talk to firms that are asking for information about how to sign on to the prompt payment code, which is a voluntary code, and so when we're talking to big businesses, it's interesting to know why they want to sign up. Some of them are signing up because it's one of the terms on a tender that they want to bid for, and we get that, we understand that. But for a lot of big companies, what we are hearing is it's about really looking at your payment practices and thinking about how well you are treating everybody in your supply chain, because that is about running an ethical business, and it's about your reputation. It's about the fact that people with really good skills want to come and work for you. The incentive is there in that you're going to get the best people, you're going to get the investors wanting to invest with you, and you're going to get suppliers who will choose working for you over choosing to work for one of your rivals, perhaps, who pays less well. And so we need to get the small businesses to be confident enough to look to see what a big business's payment practices look like, or to check with the credit reference agencies to see how fast bigger businesses that they are thinking about working with pay. Again, it's down to that enthusiasm. You launch yourself in without doing some of these checks. We need to get small businesses to check. We need to get small businesses to be brave enough to say, no, I can't wait for 150 days to be paid. That's 5 months. You wouldn't ask your employees to wait that long. And if you can't pay me sooner, I can't work with you.
Yeah.
Because until we start getting that message through to the bigger businesses, they're not really seeing the fact that they could be shooting themselves in the foot. And it's beginning to happen. I went to lunch a fortnight ago to a construction sector lunch, at which two people, one on either side of me, said, we have walked away from a contract because we were going to have to wait too long to be paid. And we simply said, we can't do this. And they were shocked. But also quite often what you find is if you do challenge the bigger business, the bigger customer, they'll say, oh, we never thought of that. Because think about this, most of the people who are working in those bigger businesses never run a small business before.
No.
They don't know that 300 quid that's owed to me is more important than the 30,000 quid that they owe to you.
Yeah. Absolutely. So one thing that I heard before, which I quite like, is for a big business, a line on a spreadsheet could be the difference between someone, putting food on their table the next day.
Yes, it absolutely is the case. And this was not a case that came to me in my term as the Small Business Commissioner, because I've only been in the post for a year. But previous to that, we did have someone, a woman who phoned on a Friday afternoon and said, I have no food, no money to feed my children over the weekend. And when the then commissioner or the caseworker phoned the bigger company and got to speak to the chief financial officer, the chief financial officer said, this has never occurred to me. It never occurred to me that £300 bill was so important. Give me that woman's personal bank account details and I will pay her now out of my personal bank account details so she can feed the children, and we will rectify this on Monday morning. But that's what I mean by, looking at your payment practices, because there probably are very simple things that you could do, but actually that would enhance your reputation as well as being a really good organisation to do work with. But I also think we need, closer partnership working in stewardship, where bigger companies really work with smaller companies in their supply chain. Because a lot of the stuff the bigger companies are doing, like how to reach net zero, the digitization and so on and so forth, they could share that information down the supply chain with their smaller suppliers that would really help them then play their role in reaching net zero and getting digital so that they have got the skills that they need.
Absolutely. I mean, for the key point to me as well is about the reputation. It's about being the customer of choice. That gives competitive advantage simply by doing the right thing by your supply chain. So again, completely agree.
I think that's increasingly important for investors. And I think it's increasingly important for particularly young people coming out of school, education, colleges and universities. They want to work with firms that are doing the right thing.
100%. So I can remember years back when I used to be a credit analyst, and I used to know of larger organisations that would effectively target themselves with letting suppliers hit the wall, either on margin or on payment terms. Now, I don't see that as much. I think the tide is changing slightly, but there's a long way to go. Would you agree?
Yes, I would agree, and I think that I find it really difficult to make the arguments with evidence because I don't have enough data. But there certainly are projects at the moment that are showing that we are paying a bit better than we were in average payment terms. So we are seeing around about the 36 days average payment terms, but that's average, and of course averages hide some ghastly behaviour, and I have seen payment terms of, people say 60 days, 90 days, that's not good enough. No, it's not, but I've seen 120 days, 150 days, and actually the other day I saw 360 days payment terms, and I thought, how can somebody expect somebody else to wait for a year in order to get paid? So that to me is really, really difficult. I mean, you are now using somebody else's money to either use as working capital in your business or to grow your business. How can that necessarily be fair? But I think we have spent probably 40 years creating all sorts of sticking plasters for late payment, or what we call late payment, which isn't always late. It's quite often poorly negotiated and poorly offered contractual payment terms. But we seem to have all sorts of sticking plasters for that without really looking at the root cause of what is it that's stopping companies paying. Are they just holding on to, as the previous high street czar calls the three squeaks rule, where you wait, you don't pay until your small supplier phones the first time. That's the first squeak. And you apologise and put it in the drawer and wait till they ring the next time, and that's the second squeak. And then you wait until the third squeak, and then you pay. And on the third squeak, that allows you to work out how long they will wait next time for payment. And that's his theory. You see, that's how a lot of things operated. I did say that at a conference, and a woman said to me, I've been through 20 squeaks, never mind 3. So there has been lots of this behaviour of course, where, boards want to see the books looking beautiful. And so everything is geared to the shareholders and the stakeholders and the board and so on and so forth. But I think that the pandemic made an awful lot of bigger organisations realise that if they didn't look after and nurture their smaller suppliers a bit, they would go to the rivals or they would be out of business. And I really do think that things are beginning to change, but not fast enough. And we're still seeing somewhere in the region of 40% of invoices not paid to terms. And in fact, the Federation of Small Businesses said at an event I was at this morning that 50% of the people, their members coming to them, were saying that they were struggling with late invoices.
Right. And so that, I mean, really interested in that change in the skew between financial impacts versus sort of social value. I mean, that's certainly something that is happening. I agree that it's not happening quick enough. What is it that we can do as, a wider community to make change happen?
I think that we need to get payment performance accepted as an ESG measure. And when I say that, I mean we need to get boards to think about it as a governance issue. So the chairs and the non-exec directors on boards of big companies need to be saying, how well do we treat our smaller suppliers? How quickly do we pay them? Because that gives us a really good feel for what kind of an ethical business we're running, or not, as the case may be. And I think that's really important. Now, a lot of chairs and NEDs that I have suggested this to have said to me, oh, payment performance, we never ask about that. That's an operational issue. It's not a board issue. And my argument is that it is very clearly a board issue, because this is about strategy and reputation. It's about transformation, all of that stuff that is board responsibility. But I also think that this is partly an S measure as well, because of the fact that those small businesses that you are paying are putting so much back into the social fabric and the communities of the areas that they sit in. And I think they can do an awful lot of levelling up because they really understand those communities. And so the S bit is really important. Problem is that's really hard for boards and the wider measurement community, for want of a better word, to measure. How do you measure that added on social value? That impact is hard to measure. It is possible if you set your mind to it. But I also think it's part of the E measure as well on ESG, because you can help for those 40% of the workforce that are working either as freelancers, sole traders, or running those micro businesses. That's 40% of the workforce. And if they don't reach net zero, well, the country isn't going to reach net zero. So it's it's part of the environmental measure as well.
So interestingly, there's the national TOMS that measures social value impact, and I think it would be fantastic to get payment performance as a clear measure on that, because that would cover anybody that is measuring themselves, and they can report it, right? How cool would that be?
Yes, absolutely. I do think it would be. And I think you then start seeing a league table and vying for being further up the league table, etc. I think what we have to do is reward really good behaviour. And people tend to get a bit concerned about, something like joining the Prompt Payment Code, because they're thinking, well, if I do that and then I breach the code, am I going to get called out and named and shamed? And that's the last thing that they want. So it's easier just not to bother. But actually, it tells you so much about your whole operation if you stop and really look at payment practices. But we also know there's a lot of big businesses out there who've who want to sign up to the code, that are spending an awful lot of money making sure that their processes are up to date and fit for purpose. And not all businesses are going to be able to do that. And not all businesses are going to get board approval to spend the money in that way. So we have to be realistic about this. And it is going to continue to take time to get these messages across. But we've got to constantly communicate the fact that it is important that you do the right thing and support your smaller suppliers. Otherwise, they just simply aren't going to be there. And that's the talent. You're going to lose that talent quite apart from the actual physical services or the products that they provide. You're losing that talent.
So I read a report, this is actually going back a little while, but it suggested that I'm going to use a phrase that I know you're not a fan of, but 900,000 hours a day is spent by UK SMEs, so big portfolios, so I apologise for saying SMEs, on chasing payments.
Yes.
900,000 hours a day. That's 112,000 people chasing payments. Now that means that there's probably a similar amount of people being chased. So when you mentioned the 3 squeaks, so probably that's your time that it's spent. So,
and it's costing everybody a fortune.
And there's no value, no efficiency, no value to either the supplier or the buyer.
There's the reason we had to have a productivity problem.
Yeah. Well, so imagine if you focused attention elsewhere other than doing that.
But even worse than that, the 15% of invoices apparently aren't chased up at all because the small business hasn't got the resource in order to chase them up. So that is how much is that in? Well, it's hard to tell because we don't know the value of those particular invoices. But if we were to measure that by value, how much are those small businesses already losing out? If you were to talk to some of the people working at the bottom, the smallest people working in the construction sector, they'll tell you that they're losing at least £1,000 a year by not chasing up their invoices because they haven't got the time or the bandwidth to be able to do that. They've got jobs to do. And for a small business that's bringing in 20 grand a year, losing a 20th of it is a big deal. So yes, we desperately need to change that. But that is time that you're not putting into planning your business, building your business, thinking about getting new customers.
Investing, job creation, innovating. It's slowing all of that. Completely agree. And on the innovation and investment, what role do you think technology has in supporting this, this campaign?
I think that we will see a report. Well, no, I'm preempting that. There may not be a report, but I do know there is work going on at the moment to look at the evidence around about late payments, and how technology has shifted late payments. And it does look as if e-commerce and cloud accounting software, all of that digitization has made a lot of a difference over the last 15 years. I think we're looking at average payment terms of about 82 days down to 36 days over the last 15 or so years. A lot of that is probably down to technology and people using, cloud accounting software, etc. And we were talking about open banking and cloud accounting this morning at the Open Banking Implementation Entity event this morning, and just looking at the difference that using cloud accounting software is making. And if I just have a quick look through my little notebook to see if I've written down anything remotely useful to this, about 75% of the people talked to started using cloud accounting software in the last 3 years. 45% of small businesses are using it. 36% started using it in the last year. So we're starting to see the effects of that coming through. And that's that open banking thing. A lot of it has been driven by HMRC, and of course, making tax digital is another driver for that. But it does seem that that there is a lot of use of that technology coming through the pipeline now. There are about 16% that still aren't adopting the technology. They're still turning up with receipts and carrier bags. And actually, I have a friend who's a bookkeeper who gets quite a lot of her invoices written on the back of cigarette packets put in a box on her doorstep. So it's still there. And those are quite hard to reach. Will they shift? well, making tax digital may very well make the same, but there are a lot of benefits in productivity increase. I mean, I laughed when I said, we have a productivity problem and this is probably part of it. But, there are benefits in productivity increase and in reduced costs. And so this is really important. I think technology is making a difference and will continue to make a difference. The other question, though, is, are the big businesses so tied up with the processes that they've got that actually they're not necessarily changing their technology to use the most up-to-date technology? That's just a question for me.
Well, the other thing is, I think slightly ironically, it's often the smaller businesses that are the innovators and the creators
Yes.
of these new technologies, so that can support, with this drive towards using technology to improve payment performance.
And don't forget, the government's got the Help to Grow digital scheme, that if you are thinking to yourself, well, I'm not digital, I don't know how to get digital, then have a look on that site and see what help you can get there, because there is help, even financial help, to help you buy software, suitable software. But I talked to somebody running a small business not so long ago, and he was saying that it's saving him 9 hours a week. So that's a full day a week.
Yeah.
Well, it's half a day for most small business owners.
Yeah,
But it's,
exactly.
that's a day a week saved by using a cloud accounting software.
Absolutely.
And that is really useful time that you can be using for all sorts of other things that we mentioned.
Completely. But is there anything that we can learn from other markets that are doing, other countries that are doing things slightly different, more effective than us? Or is everyone in the same boat?
I think most people are in the same boat, to be honest. I talk to the Ombudsman in Australia quite a lot, and he and I beat our heads off the same brick walls, I think. In Belgium, they don't have a small business commissioner. They'd like one. They have got tighter regulations since February around about payments. The Nordic countries are possibly slightly better than us at it, but by about on average a day,
Right.
on an average a day. So I'm saying 36 days on average here, maybe 35 or something of that ilk there. I have a huge document that has pulled together everything I can find about what's happening in other countries, and there's absolutely nothing that's making me jump up and down and say, we've really got to follow this because they've got it cracked.
So
And
how
it's quite taxing to get big businesses to shift, and not all big businesses will be able to shift and spend the amount of money, that is needed to shift to paying within 30 days, for instance. So we've got to be careful that we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater too. I suppose the question for most small businesses is, when do you need it to be paid by? So it's back to the cash flow point again. A lot of small businesses say to me, look, if only I knew I was going to get paid in 60 days, that's fine. I'm not bothered about being paid in 30. I just want to know when the money is coming in. And then other businesses will say to me, I couldn't accept that piece of work because they weren't going to pay me for 45 days. And actually, that's too long. I need to be paid in 15 days. So, it's horses for courses. And then, of course, there are all sorts of reasons in some cases why, the company that's actually buying needs that credit of those extra days because they're not going to see the end result for a year. So this is why I don't like the use of SMEs. I really think we need to think about the needs of the sole traders, the freelancers, the micro businesses, and even then they're all different. There certainly isn't one size fits all.
And they're different at different times in the year, right? So you've got seasonality. A good friend of mine is so he's an agricultural contractor. In the summer, he will go and chop down trees and hedges and things like that. He has to recruit temporary labour. He has to pay them weekly. He's not as busy in the winter, but he needs to get access to his funds quicker so he can pay his temporary labour.
And sometimes he has to ask for payments up front.
Yeah.
And quite often in the construction sector, you've got lots of people who not only have to hire the labour, but they have to buy the materials. And of course, those costs are really worrying everybody at the moment, because the cost that you've put on the quote is probably not the cost when you go to buy it 2 weeks later, because everything's going up and such so quickly. And you might need to ask for payments, part payments, staged payments, payments at different times in order to let you complete the next stage of the job. And lots of small businesses coming into and setting up the small businesses at the moment possibly don't know that, and don't even know that they could do that. So we need to get a lot more help for small businesses around about payments. I have talked to bank managers and accountants who have said to me, oh, we've never had that conversation with our small business clients. We've never asked them how they're going to get paid. We've never asked them about invoicing. We've never given them any advice on that. And it seems to me there's a lot more support that we could be providing.
So how can businesses like ours do our bit to contribute to supporting in this movement? We're not a large business. We, Saltaire is a small micro business.
You can be sharing what you know with lots of your clients. I need to be getting more information on my website too. I need the accountants to be talking to their small business clients, but also talking to their big business clients and saying, have you thought that small business at the other end of the scale is one of your fundamental cogs in the wheel? If you don't pay that business on time, you need to know your, and I was going to say know your customer, but that's not what I'm trying to say. It's know your supplier, really. You need to know your suppliers. Who are they? Why do they operate the way they do? And what does that mean that they need in order to be able to carry on functioning? And I think it's beholden on any business working with any other business to try to work out just how they can work together in partnership and what stewardship they can do of that smaller supplier.
Absolutely. And what can we expect from the Small Business Commissioner's office next?
More of the same, I think. We've just got to keep getting the messages out. It took 30 years to get seatbelts. I haven't got 30 years. I've only got another 3 years in this role. So I've got to try and get the messages out much more quickly than that. But we will be there trying to help small businesses to resolve their payment disputes. We'll be there trying to get the bigger businesses signed on to the prompt payment code. We will be there trying to make each understand the operation of the other better. Because, as I say, most people who've worked in small business, in a big business, have never run a small business. And so how could they possibly be expected to know if they're procurement professionals or payment professionals? How could they be expected to know what it's like to run a small business if they don't stop to find out? And people running small businesses don't know how that bigger business functions. I always, as a freelancer, I've usually had about 6 clients at a time. Well, they're all different. And if they expect me to work out by osmosis how they operate, that's quite a chunk out of my time. And so it's really important to build the relationship that means that they tell me how they work and how they function and who my contact is and how I invoice and, when I'm going to get paid, etc. It's partly about building relationships and communicating better.
Fantastic. Well, look, we are huge supporters of the message, huge supporters of you and what you're doing. Really want to be part of it and do our bit.
I need all the support I can get.
So, well, we've got two businesses that support is the aim to support trade, and we'll certainly be looking to share the message with all of our clients across those organisations. But Liz, thank you ever so much for your time today. It's been absolutely fascinating. I could probably go on for another 45 minutes or whatever it is.
Well, as you may have guessed, so can I. If it's about small businesses, I can go on for days.
Maybe it's a Celtic thing. I don't know.
It might be.
Yeah, so Liz, it's been absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much. We'd love to stay in touch and maybe catch up again in the next few months.
Thank you very much for having me.